Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. Coming up, more bad news for the Mavericks. Shai and the Thunder both get to 50. And Sean Highkin from Rose Garden Report comes on to talk about the Trailblazers and their recent run. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, S.
Morning, man.
Kind of a bummer Monday night. The schedule was not great. A lot of guys missing. Not great games. And then we got so many injuries.
God,
last
it was awful.
night.
March basketball. Yeah.
Yeah. It's everyone's just trying to get to the playoffs healthy. That's what you hear, right? But we've got this tight playoff race. So it's not like guys can sit out. Every game really matters right now. And last night, here's everyone who left the game with an injury: Jaren Jackson Jr., Tyrese Maxey, Kyrie Irving, Gary Payton II, Justin Edwards, Keyshawn George, and Jaden Hardy. That's a bad Monday night.
That's incredible. I mean, in a bad way, in a terrible way. Injuries suck. They're the worst part of it. It's just part of the way the NBA works, unfortunately. But bad Monday night.
And let's start with the Kyrie Irving injury. Kyrie was going up for a layup in the blowout loss to the Sacramento Kings last night, and it looked like he hyperextended his knee. He then stayed on the court, laid down for a while, grabbing that knee for a while, got up, shot the free throws. Obviously, first thing that comes to mind, you start thinking about Kobe when he tore his Achilles, and shot the 2 free throws. But man, I was watching the video of that and I noticed, man, he had tears in his eyes. And so, as of right now, like, we don't know what the injury is. It feels bad, when you see a guy like Kyrie Irving standing there with tears in his eyes while he's shooting the free throws. So obviously, our heart goes out to Kyrie. But this Mavs team feels a little bit snake bitten.
My heart goes out to Mavs fans also. I mean, obviously Kyrie is having an incredible season. I think it was worthy of an all-star nod. He got the all-star nod, being able to be an all NBA type of guy for them this season. Really, really excellent. Just all around, really leading this Mavericks team. And so for him to go down with injury, it's like, what else do the Mavericks fans have to deal with? Ticket prices going up, and you got Luka Doncic, and even on a serious note, there's just so much happening in Mavs world right now where you can't help but feel bad for every single aspect of it. And then you got to wake up every day reminding yourself that Luka Doncic also got traded from this team. It's tough, really, really tough.
Yep. And still no update on the injured guys, Anthony Davis, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively. So hopefully that coming this week. So we'll keep an eye on Dallas and hopefully Kyrie
some good
avoided anything bad. But as of right now, we don't know. It just looked bad. There was some basketball last night that was good. Even though Houston, everyone was out for Houston. No Şengün, no Fred VanVleet. I mean, they started Reed Sheppard in his first NBA start last night against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And look, the Thunder took advantage. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander took advantage. Shai scored 51 points. Oklahoma City gets to 50 wins. No other team in the West even has 40 wins right now, S. Yeah. That's kind of sick.
So I have a bunch of OKC stats right now. The first one, I have to say, SGA, by the way, to our conversation about best offensive player yesterday, SGA has the most 20-point games, most 30-point games, most 40-point games, and most 50-point games this season. So he's doing it all, which is unbelievable. But on a team perspective, so the 50-15 club, I'm making a new club here, right? Phil Jackson said 40-20. Let's do 50-15. The Cavs did it the other day. Thunder now just did it. And before this season, there were 20 teams that made the 50-20 club. Basically, 80% of those teams made it to at least the conference finals. 10 of them made the finals, and 8 of them won the championship. So if you're in that group, you have about a 40% chance of winning the NBA championship, which is pretty good. One other stat about the Thunder. So they're now 11 games ahead of the second seed in the Western Conference, which is crazy. Unreal. Yeah. The differential, the gap that they've created for themselves in the West, it's absurd. But there are a lot of teams that have done that in history. Actually, 19 since the 1979-1980 season, which is the year Larry Bird and Magic Johnson came into the league. Only 19 teams have done it since then. 16 of those 19 teams have won the NBA championship. And all of those teams have either made it to the conference finals or made it to the finals. So Thunder fans, like, this is a pretty good indicator for what might happen in June, because the odds are in your favor that this Thunder team probably makes its way to the conference finals, probably makes its way to the finals. And most of the time, teams that are this dominant win the championship.
Listen, I feel like this is just a different era.
It is.
And
it definitely is.
They've got to have some scheduling luck come playoff time. I still think Denver is,
and they got to be
issue.
Healthy, right?
And they got to be healthy too, right? And knock on wood, so far, since they got healthy, everyone looks to be, doing okay. Before we move on from this game, let's talk about Reed Sheppard, because this was a guy coming into the season. I had people telling me, this is like Mark Price mixed with, Allen Iverson, or, just giving me just a lot of hyperbole about him. I watched some of his stuff. I've seen his tape. I mean, obviously the guy is good. I watched the clips from the 49-point G League game. I mean, he can play. Yeah. I saw a guy who looks like he belonged on an NBA court.
Yeah, I mean, I wish that this becomes more opportunity for him at the NBA level. I think he definitely has an ability to score the ball. I mean, the defensive side of it will absolutely have to come along, but it's just hard to see him getting consistent run in Houston with the way that this team is progressing. There's so many guys on there, and Cam Whitmore had a good game tonight, and that's another guy who's kind of like in and out of their rotation, depending on how healthy they are. Just a team that, like, this is not for this season, but obviously for this summer and moving forward, some sort of consolidation trade, because these guys clearly need opportunity. They clearly are good enough to do so, and Reed is chief among them.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a bunch of guys that are good enough to be in the rotation or starters in a lot of places, similar to Portland and their situation, which we're going to talk about with Sean Highkin here in a few minutes. Let's talk about Memphis. They lost their third consecutive game on a game winner to the opponent. And in this game, they actually lost Jaren Jackson Jr. to this ankle injury that we talked about at the top of the show. So we don't know how long he's going to be out, if he's going to miss some time. But they have just been scuffling lately. They're falling down the standings as the Lakers and the Nuggets have risen up. Yep. And Desmond Bane had maybe the worst 2 minutes of his career that I've seen in the NBA. He has an awful travel that gets called. So a big turnover there gives Atlanta a chance to tie the game. And then his pocket gets picked by Dyson Daniels, and they give up the game-winning layup at the other end from Karis LeVert. And again, this is just 3 straight losses on game winners for Memphis. They got to tighten up, man. It's getting late in the West.
I mean, look, they didn't have Ja, and Jaren got hurt, so all those caveats. But at the same time, like, you got to be able to close out these games regardless. If you're touting the depth that you have, the versatility that you have with the Grizzlies, like, you got to be able to close out these games. And I think the fourth quarter execution has been something we've talked about a few times with this team, where when the game gets a little bit slower, when the fast break transition offense isn't always accessible to them, they kind of just get stuck in the mud. And so that doesn't work well in the postseason. That's a question you got to have moving forward. And I think it's a fair question to have with this Grizzlies team, even at full strength. Hopefully Jaren is healthy. Hopefully it's not that big of an ankle issue, and they can get fully healthy for the playoffs. But as you said, like, they're fourth in the West right now, and they could potentially end up being fifth. They're only a game and a half behind the Rockets for that. So
the Warriors, they pick up a win last night. They're 8-1 with Jimmy Butler out there. I mean, this is a team that's on its way up. I mean, look, there's a scenario
things
in
can
which
change really quickly.
The Warriors could maybe be the 4 seed by the time we get to the playoffs. We've only got 20 games left, but with the way things work, if Jaren misses any time, that's going to be really tough for the Grizzlies to cover up for. So, we got to keep an eye on that. Guys, stick around after the break. Sean Highkin here to talk about our Trailblazers and how good of a job Chauncey Billups has been doing coaching them up. The Portland Trailblazers have become one of our favorite stories of the season, and we wanted to dig a little bit deeper into how things have turned around for them. So I got my good buddy, Sean Highkin from the Rose Garden Report to stop in after the game last night. Sean, how's it going, man? Been a while.
Doing all right, Dave. How about you? It's good to be with you.
Great. This show is a lot of fun, and so are the Trailblazers. this was an unexpected season, or this has been an unexpected season. If you would have told me before the season started that they would be that the Blazers would be a half game back of the Suns in the standings at the beginning of March, number one, I would say, wow, they're making a playoff push. That's impressive. I'm wrong there. The Suns stink. But number two, I would say, wow, things have gone very right for the Trailblazers. And I didn't even know they were going to put a competent team on the court. They've been so much fun to watch. They've been so good. What's triggered this?
I'm with you. If you had told me that on March 3rd, when we're recording this, they would be closer to the play-in than they were to any realistic chance at landing Cooper Flag, which was absolutely their goal going into the season, was to be with the Charlottes and the Washingtons and the Utahs. Like, that was their plan going in. They just have too many good basketball players, I think, to be able to do that. And it's not just, some of the veterans that a lot of people think they should have traded at the deadline, like the Anthony Simonses and the Jeremy Grants. It's a lot of their young guys that are the guys that they're building around long term, whether that's, Denny Avdia, who they traded for over the summer, or Toumani Camara, or Scoot Henderson, who's really started to put it together the last couple of months after what was a pretty rough rookie season. And first part of this season, he started to really, I think, turn a corner in a way that I know people in the organization think he's made some real steps. And then, the Shaedon Sharpe thing has been kind of up and down, but he's been playing really well on this road trip. So it's the young guys that are driving a lot of these wins. And I think that's the thing that the organization is looking at and saying, this is really encouraging, that like, it's not just they're winning a bunch of games because they have some veterans who are probably not going to be here long term, but and so it's messing with their lottery odds. It's not really that type of thing going on. It's a lot of the young
real
guys.
Internal growth.
Yes, exactly. And also, a move that they made last summer that I think a lot of people saw as pretty risky, which was that trade for Denny Avdia, which you don't really see teams that are in the category of rebuilding teams give up draft capital to bring somebody in. But they looked at Avdia as somebody who, is on a really good contract for whatever that's worth, but also somebody that they felt like positionally fits with the other young guys that they've had, is young enough. He's just turned 24 earlier this year. And skill wise, like, they felt like there was still some upside there. Like, maybe eventually there's even like some fringe all-star upside there. And they brought him in, and that move has worked out about as well as they could have hoped for it. I think him and Kamara have been their two best players this season overall, just like across the board. So, this time last year, if you had asked me like what the Blazers have to be excited about at all, I would have probably not really had a lot to give you, because so many of their young guys were either injured, like Shaedon Sharpe missed a lot of last season with an injury, and then Scoot was pretty rough for a lot of last year. This year, you look at it, there's a lot of stuff, I think, for them to be excited and to be encouraged about.
So let's actually focus on a couple of these young guys. Scoot is the guy that I think most people will come to and say, all right, well, an inconsistent start to his career, but is starting to figure things out at the point guard level. Me and Dave have talked about this before, where it's like, it's so hard to be a point guard in the NBA. And so that learning curve for Scoot has been there. What have your impressions been of his second year and sort of how he's got his legs under him now?
Well, he's just kind of gotten to a point where he's a little bit more sure of what he's doing when he's out there. Like, he's not, it doesn't feel like he's like making, he's like jumping, going for a layup or something and like making a decision midair what he's going to do. Like, it feels like that whole process has slowed down. And kind of to your point about how, the point guard position is hard to learn, I think he also, and I think if you gave any of the people involved in this truth serum at this point with what we've seen, I think they'd probably tell you that he's been put in kind of a disadvantage, like at a disadvantage, because the Ignite was just not a good. I mean, you're seeing it with a lot of the Ignite guys, like, it's like Kuminga is still kind
doesn't
of up
exist
and down.
Anymore, right?
Right. There's like, they shut that thing down for a reason. And like, you're starting to see like a lot of the Ignite guys, even the guys like Scoot and like Jalen Green and Kuminga and like some of the guys that were like top 10 picks. It doesn't really come around right away. And, there was this kind of similar talk about those guys earlier on in their careers, but Scoot,
for sure,
really, it's been like almost 2 months at this point that Scoot has mostly been pretty good. So I think at this point, you have to start to think he's not just having a hot streak of shooting or whatever. Like, he's actually started to take some steps.
Right. What does that mean for their team? Like, the roster, right? Like the construction of the team, when you have all of these young guys. And you mentioned, I mean, the age ranges, I mean, you've got Scoot and then you've got Denny Advia and DeAndre Ayton, who are in their mid-20s. I mean, it just seems like the window here. I mean, maybe that's the goal, is to create a team that is a little bit more intergenerational, and you've got, varying contract types and sizes. I'm not sure. Like, do you have any insight there into what, all of these young guys showing so much promise could really mean for them?
Well, they at this point, they just, this is year 2 of the post Dame kind of rebuild. What's kind of ironic about this is the team they have right now would have been an awesome team to put around Dame. Like you put Dame with like Kamara, Avdia, Shaedon Sharp,
oh my God,
all these guys. That would have been probably the best team that Dame has had since the, LaMarcus Aldridge, Batum, Robin Lopez, like that team. But they basically, this front office has basically just the whole way prioritized big athletic wings that can defend and play multiple positions. That's pretty much just the type of guys that they go for, whether it's Kamara, who they wanted in that trade with Phoenix, or Avdia, who they just gave up a bunch to get. Those are just kind of the guys that they've gone after, and they feel like, you can find shooting other ways, or you can find, some of the
or
other
you can
things.
Develop it, right?
Right, or you can. Right. You look at, Scoot has been a good shooter for the last couple of months, and they're, he's been working on his shot. Then, Toumani Kamara, who, is known in his rookie season more as a defensive guy, wasn't really doing a whole lot on offense. He's become a pretty solid 3-point shooter this year too. And, Avdia, the way he can kind of get downhill and, pressure the rim and do stuff like that. Like, they have, a lot of that stuff. It's an interesting thing, Dave, you're talking about, like the team building thing. The way they've gone about this rebuild has been pretty interesting to me. Mm-hmm. And, you can land wherever you want to land on whether you think this is the approach you would take or you think this is the right approach. But when they've done these deals, whether it was the Dame trade or some of these other ones that they've done, they didn't go into them saying, we want to just get as many draft picks as possible and just have as many lottery tickets as possible, the way that like Oklahoma City did, or the way that like Utah is, or, you're starting to see like Charlotte start to do that a little bit now. They went into it saying, we want players, and we want players that are of a certain type and of a certain skill set, of a certain age range, of a certain like salary contract type, so that we can start actually building a basketball team, instead of just saying, hey, we have all these future draft picks and maybe one day some of them will turn into something and maybe some of them won't. But that's kind of been the approach that they've taken. And you're starting to see more of their gambles on this kind of stuff have hit than not. And that's kind of why you're starting to see them have these results that they have.
It's almost an ethical rebuild.
I was going to say
a fake future, right? Like, I'm not doing the thing where, like the AI salesmen right now that are going around telling you about how AI is going to make all your dreams come true and be your girlfriend and all these things, right? So, what we see with a lot of teams, for instance, the Washington Wizards, they haven't even started the tear down yet.
They still have like they traded Kuzma, but like they still have like Brogdon that I guess Brogdon's coming off or whoever. But the way I kind of have been telling it to people over the last couple of 6 weeks or so, since they've started winning unexpectedly, and there have certainly been a lot of people here in town that are saying like, oh, well, they're messing up the tank. This isn't the best thing for the team.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you.
Here's my thing. Last year, they won 21 games.
Yeah, right.
And they fell back 3 spots in the lottery and got the 7th pick. The year before that, they won 33 games and didn't really pull the plug on the season until like the last month of the season. And they moved up to the 3rd pick in the lottery.
Yeah, and there's no rhyme or reason to the lottery anymore. Yeah.
The last 2 years in a row, Detroit had the worst record in the league and moved back to 5th. So it's like if you're a team like Washington, like objectively and mathematically, what they're doing is probably the quote unquote best way to build a team, but they better hit on the lottery. They better get Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper, or else they're just going to be doing this
for loser's path. I don't like it. Sean. I like what Portland's doing.
Dude,
I think
you and I are kind of in the same.
That's right. Having good players is actually a good thing. You teach winning culture that way. They don't roll out there with a bunch of losers. And I do want to start talking about them not being losers like Chauncey Billups said they might be if they had gone back out on the court. This has now been a couple of months, but Es brought this to my attention, actually. Chauncey Billups called these guys losers because they rolled over. And since that time, this is when we've watched them go on this run. And, I've been critical in the years past about the job that Chauncey Billups has done coaching the team. I got to tip the cap. He's pushing all the right buttons. The rotations have been very good. I liked some of the experimental things that he's doing. So, talk to me about Chauncey Billups, who is now like a really good coach.
Also extension eligible, right? Last year his contract going in.
So for people in the audience who maybe don't know the exact thing that you guys are referring to, at the beginning of November, they lose a game by 45 to Memphis. Right. And afterwards, Chauncey gets up in front of us at the podium and says that what he told the team in the locker room was that if you don't, if you slept well tonight, you're a loser. Right. So he says that that's not like, sources say that he did. Like, he said that on the record to us that he told the team. And so if that's the version of it that he told us, like, you can imagine the version of it that he gave them.
Yep.
I was seriously wondering whether he was going to survive that homestand. Like, if they had lost the next couple of games, I was wondering if Nate Bjorkgren was going to be the interim coach by the end of that week. But they won their next 3 games in a row. And, I think at the minimum that kind of saved, his job in the season. And then you've seen kind of the way that it's gone since then in terms of, to your point, Dave, about pushing all the right buttons. He took Shaedon Sharpe out of the starting lineup at the beginning of this run that they went on. And he was very honest about why. He said, Shaedon's a really good scorer, but he's going to be a 25-point scorer who gives up 25 points on the defensive end per game too. So he basically did that as a challenge to Shaedon to be better on the defensive end. And, it's been a little bit up and down, but Shaedon largely has responded to that. And, the same thing with Scoot. Like, early on in the season, Scoot was having a lot of the same types of issues that he had last season. And there were people around the team that were wondering, like, did they just miss on this pick? Is Scoot just never going to be, a starting caliber point guard? But Chauncey, coached him hard. He stayed on him. He said, like, look, what you're doing is not good enough. Scoot took it to heart, and Scoot has been really good for the last 6 weeks or so. And, I think kind of the same vein as what we were talking about earlier with Scoot, how hard it is to learn the point guard position for the first time in the NBA. It's not easy to be a head coach for the first time in the NBA either. And Chauncey's also been kind of put in. We can go through the whole list of everything.
He didn't get LeBron James for his situation.
We can go through the whole list of everything that's happened in the 4 years that he's been in the job. Like, the Neil stuff happened like a month into his first season, and then
crazy to think it's been 4 years.
And then Dame has this, the surgery this first year, so they tear it down, they tank, and then the next, Dame requests a trade, and then last year they have all the injuries, and it's just. All of this stuff, it hasn't been a really ideal situation for somebody to walk into as their first head coaching job, but I think he's come out of it. I'll say this. I do not think that he is going to be back next season. I still have, that's been since last April when he was going into the final guaranteed year of his contract. That's been how I felt it was going to go. I still think that's how it's going to go, but I think Chauncey has done a really good job of showing teams that, maybe this situation in Portland wasn't ideal, but he made the best out of a bad situation, and he's worth another look. And I think he's going to, wherever that may be, he may get another look.
Right. He might be valuable to what another team might want to do. Also, like, if you look at the life cycle of a team, like over the last 4 or 5 years, right, there have been teams in the second half of the season that make a run, right? The Grizzlies in the bubble. Then there was the Magic and Thunder. Last year it was the Rockets, and now we're seeing the Rockets really pop off. It feels like it's the pre-leap, right? And actually some of those situations ended up being a coaching change. In the Rockets situation, Ime Udoka coming in really helped them galvanize defensively. Do you think this is the pre-leap for the Blazers, where next year we're looking at a playoff team or a play-in team, or is it the other way around?
I think they would like that to be the case. I'll tell you this. I think after the way the last month and a half has gone, I don't think they're going to be going into next season thinking we need to tank, we need to get AJ DeBonsa, or we need to get whoever the top guy in the lottery is. I think they've kind of figured out that they have too many good players to be able to be as bad as you need to be in order to put yourself in the mix for some of those guys. So whether it's a coaching change is the thing that galvanizes it, or I think they have other moves they have to make as far as, roster wise. Like they got to figure out the Jeremy Grant thing, because I don't think
they got to consolidate. They have a lot of guys.
Give more opportunity to the young guys too, right?
Like if the Scoot leap is real, then like you figure something out with Simons. Like they have other moves that they have to make, but I think you're more likely to see kind of whatever the next level up version. And I don't know who the player is going to be, but you look at the idea of what they did last summer with Denny Avdia, where they said, we identify this guy as somebody that we think fits with what we want to do, and we think he can help us, and we're willing to even give up what people think might be quote unquote too much to give up for a guy. Whatever like the next level up, whatever like the fringe star version of that is. Mm-hmm. I think it's more likely that they try to go for something like that than it is that they say, well, we need to tank for another year and we need to get another high lottery pick, because I just don't think that's realistic for them at this point.
It's Portland, man. You field a competitive team, people show up. You don't have to have championship or bust aspirations.
Feels eerily similar to another team that I cover.
Yeah, exactly. You can read him over at the Rose Garden Report. Sean Highkin, my buddy, thanks for hanging out with us. Appreciate you. That's going to do it for today's show, folks. For Sean Highkin and Es Baraheni, I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.